Hello and welcome to the 10 o'clock news. I'm Priyanshi Sharma and we'll get you the top news stories of the day. Well, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is now headed to Washington after New York to begin his official state visit to the United States after leading the Yoga Day event at the UN headquarters in New York. And on the other side, the violence in Manipur is continuing for close to 2 months now, and Congress's Sonia Gandhi has appealed for peace. We'll get you the details on those top stories. First, let's take a look at the headlines. After New York, Prime Minister Narendra Modi heads to Washington, D.C., where the state visit will officially begin, and he will meet the U.S. President Joe Biden and top CEOs. Euphoric Indian diaspora gears up in celebration to welcome Prime Minister Modi in Washington. Prime Minister Modi leads the Yoga Day event at the UN headquarters on the 9th International Yoga Day. The event creates a Guinness World Record for people of most nationalities performing yoga together, as people from 135 nationalities participated, including Hollywood stars, diplomats, political leaders. At the event, the Prime Minister says yoga is universal and free from copyright. The Congress's Sonia Gandhi appeals for peace and harmony in Manipur as ethnic violence continues for close to 2 months now. She says unprecedented violence has left a deep wound in the conscience of the nation. She says it devastated people's lives and forced people to flee the only place they called home. Climate change kills. Heat-linked deaths reported in Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. In Uttar Pradesh's Ballerina, over 50 suspected heat wave deaths reported in just the last 3 days. The Enforcement Directorate conducts raids at 15 locations in Mumbai in connection with an alleged COVID center scam by the local body BMC under the Uddhav Sena regime. Several properties raided, including those of businessman Sujit Patkar, a close aide of Aditya Thackeray. And our focus is on the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. The Prime Minister is going to land in Washington very soon, where he will meet CEOs, and after that, of course, that official state dinner that he will have with the US President Joe Biden and the First Lady Jill Biden. Now, along with that, in Washington, several other high-profile events planned, along with an address to the US Congress, which is Prime Minister Narendra Modi's second. Now, as the Prime Minister is going to land in Washington in just a short while from now, the Indian diaspora has gathered outside the hotel in which Prime Minister Narendra Modi is going to stay in Washington, and they are celebrating there to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi as they are getting ready to welcome the Prime Minister. Remember, Prime Minister Narendra Modi started his day 2 in the United States by leading the Yoga Day event today at the United Nations building in New York, as it was the International Day of Yoga. And after this, he's now headed to Washington. There you can see visuals of how the Indian diaspora is gathering and celebrating there to receive Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington. And this is where the Prime Minister's state visit will officially begin, and where the Prime Minister will meet US President Joe Biden for important strategic discussions for US-India ties. The Prime Minister has met leading American economist Professor Paul Romer, investor and co-founder of the hedge fund Bridgewater Associates, and other eminent personalities, through thought leaders as well. Earlier in the day, he met the Tesla chief and Twitter chairman Elon Musk, and after that, after all of those meetings and the International Yoga Day celebrations, he's headed to Washington, D.C. My colleague Maha Siddiqui is there in the United States tracking the Prime Minister's visit. And Maha, now the Prime Minister is going to land in Washington in just any moment from now. So what all is planned for him there?
Yes, in fact, Prime Minister will land at about 10:25 p.m. By Indian Standard Time in Washington, D.C. And today is when he will, in fact, after landing, there's the diaspora that will welcome him. There's also an event which will be with the First Lady Jill Biden. that he will participate in at about 2:30 p.m. by the American Standard Time over here, after which he will once again be meeting a set of business industry leaders. We have seen him meet a set of business leaders in New York, and that list in fact included 24 people, out of which he met some like Elon Musk as well. He plans to similarly meet at two junctures CEOs in Washington DC as well, though he is, remember, addressing a full gathering of young entrepreneurs on the 23rd, an event in the early evening which has been organized by the U.S.-India Strategic Partnership Forum, where he will be addressing young businessmen, entrepreneurs at the Kennedy Center, after which he will also be meeting the Diaspora in Washington, D.C., which will be an evening event just before he leaves from Washington, D.C. for Egypt, his next destination. But the most crucial and critical aspect of his engagements here in the United States will be on the 22nd, when he will be meeting President Joe Biden in a bilateral meeting. He'll be given a guard of honor as well, because this is a state visit. He will, in fact, after the bilateral meeting, there is going to be press statements as well. And we are likely to see, there is expectation rather, Priyanshi, if I can put it that way, for some big ticket announcements in the defense sector and in the tech sector as well. As far as the business sector is, defense sector is concerned, we are likely to see at least two big announcements. One with regards to the joint co-production of the GE jet engines for HAL India for its use in its latest version of the light combat aircraft. And if this agreement finally goes through, then it will be a very positive signal, because when we talk about joint production, will this build the groundwork for technology transfer as well? That is the big question, something that India has been asking for, considering India wants to be self-reliant as far as defense equipment is concerned. India is largely a defense equipment exporter. And the other deal is that of the drones, where India will be buying drones from the US.
All right, Maha Siddiqui, thanks very much for joining us with those details. So as Maha pointed out, those important discussions planned between Prime Minister Narendra Modi and the US President Joe Biden as he's headed to Washington now. And during his visit to New York, as he was celebrating the International Day of Yoga at the UN headquarters, a world record has been created at the UN headquarters for the people of the most number of nationalities performing yoga together. People from 135 nationalities performed yoga today at the UN headquarters, along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, beating the previous record of people from 114 nationalities performing yoga together. The Prime Minister, who's on the second day of his 4-day US state visit, received the title for the Guinness World Record. And in fact, top UN officials, diplomats and prominent individuals from around the world joined Prime Minister Modi in this 1-hour yoga program in New York. The president of the 77th session of the UN General Assembly, Xaba Kurosi, Hollywood actor Richard and Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina J. Mohammed, were among the prominent individuals who attended this event that was led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. He has tweeted about this as well. He said that what a grand Yoga Day program in New York. I'm grateful for the energy and commitment that's been shown by all participants. And this shows how yoga unites us in the pursuit of health, peace, and harmony. Now, meanwhile, violence in the northeastern state of Manipur is continuing for close to 2 months now. And amid that, the Congress leader Sonia Gandhi has put out a video message appealing for peace and harmony in the northeastern state. She said that the violence in Manipur has left deep wounds in the nation's conscience, and she's saddened to see people flee the place that they once called their home. Listen in.
Brothers and sisters of Manipur, for nearly 50 days, we have witnessed a great human tragedy unfolding in Manipur. The unprecedented violence that has devastated the lives of people in your state and uprooted thousands has left a deep wound in the conscience of our nation. I express my condolences to all those who have lost their loved ones. The history of Manipur stands testament to her ability to embrace people of all ethnicities, religions, and backgrounds.
An internet ban has also been extended till Sunday there in Manipur. But for now, moving on to the other big stories. In Maharashtra, there are political fireworks ahead of the polls for the local body, the BMC. The Enforcement Directorate conducted raids at 15 locations in Mumbai in connection with a money laundering case connected to COVID centers that were made while the Uddhav Sena was in power in Maharashtra. The raids were against businessmen Sujit Patkar, Suraj Chavan and others who are close associates of the Shiv Sena leader Sanjay Raut and Aditya Thackeray as well. Here's our report.
BMC elections are expected in the next 4 months, but the fireworks have already begun. This morning, the Enforcement Directorate raided 15 premises, of which one was the residence of Aditya Thackeray's personal secretary, Suraj Chavan, and the other belonged to the key aide and close friend of Sanjay Raut, Sujit Patkar. The reasons behind the raids: an old complaint by BJP leader Kirit Somaiya, which was converted into an ED case. Let me explain what the scan is all about. In February last year, BJP leader Kirit Somaiya had approached the Mumbai police with a complaint. That complaint was against a hospital called Lifeline Hospital Management Services. Now, this new company, it seemed, was formed only on papers, and this company was awarded a lot of contracts to the tune of 100 crore is what the allegation of Kirit Somaiya is. The person who is the main managing partner in this company is Sujit Patkar, who is a very, very close aide of Sanjay Raut. Now, Lifeline was awarded contracts for half a dozen COVID jumbo centers that had come up during the tenure of Uddhav Thackeray as the chief minister between 2019 to 2022. The company allegedly only existed on paper when the contract was awarded to it, and this Lifeline Hospital Management Services allegedly is just a bogus false company. Only after the contracts were awarded to it that it started giving documents about its registration. Even right now, we are being told that the documents are not in order. Now, the BMC officials were allegedly aware about this Lifeline company and its bogus status, and even then this was done. What is very interesting is the Pune Municipal Corporation had allegedly blacklisted this company, and yet the BMC went ahead and gave it 21 different contracts. The FIR, of course, been registered in August 2022. Later, the ED started probing, and currently what we are being told is that bureaucrats, some private companies, some private officials, PS of Aditya Thackeray, etc., they are all under the scanner. Very importantly, the former BMC commissioner, Mr. Chahal, Iqbal Chahal, has already been questioned by the Enforcement Directorate in this case. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. A recent CAG report has pointed towards irregularities worth 12,000 crore. This week, the Maharashtra government has formed an SIT to probe the matter.
ज्या भ्रष्टाचाराच्या संदर्भात सीएजीने आपल्या रिपोर्टमध्ये भ्रष्टाचार झाल्याच्या संदर्भातलं सूतोवाच केलं, आता त्याच्यावर काल माननीय मुख्यमंत्र्यांनी चौकशी तयार केली आहे, SIT तयार केली आहे.
While the Shiv Sena's tenure in BMC ended a year ago, work is going on under the supervision of BMC administration till the elections are held. After Chief Minister Shinde ordered an inquiry, former Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray alleged that in the last 1 year there have been many scams in the BMC and 7,000 to 8,000 crore rupees have been used by the administration from the BMC's fixed deposit.
स्थिति हुई है कि खुद ने चोरी की है, चोरी कर रहे हैं, दिन दहाड़े कर रहे हैं, और इसीलिए हम 1 तारीख को मुंबई की ओर से, मुंबई की जितने सारी जनता है उनकी ओर से मुंबई महापालिका पर हम मोर्चा लेकर जाएंगे.
Now this fight between the two factions of Shiv Sena is to establish themselves at the BMC. While Uddhav Thackeray has so far successfully managed to keep majority of his councillors with himself, in the last few months, Eknath Shinde has been trying to make his place in Mumbai by overseeing projects like the MTHL and the coastal roads. In the race to get in power, at the country's richest municipal corporation, both the factions are accusing each other of corruption. In Mumbai, with camera person Rajendra Dayalkar, Sohit Mishra, NDTV.
Short break now. More news continues on the other side. Stay tuned.
दुनिया में कुछ लोग
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
That informs
inspires
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity. Because at NDTV, trust is everything.
"23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network
That informs
inspires
and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV.
because the only side we're on is yours.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accurate.
Breaking news from Paris now, extremely concerning. There's been a huge explosion in central Paris, and reports suggest that several people have been injured in this explosion that has been reported from the French capital. Numerous police personnel and firefighters are currently on the scene. As you can see, plumes of smoke that are clearly visible, showing how massive, how big this blast is there in Paris. And the reason, though, is not yet clear over what caused this blast, what caused this explosion. But currently, several reports suggest, and even eyewitnesses at the spot suggest, that there was a gas smell before this explosion, and that's why it's suspected to be a gas explosion. The police officials are currently saying that there are several people who have been injured, and in fact some of them are critical, but they have not yet given an exact figure of how many people have been impacted by this. But the suspicion currently is that this was because of gas, and it seems to be a gas explosion till now, though the exact reason is not yet clear. We'll of course continue tracking the updates from Paris. And unfortunately, there has been a blast in the northeastern state of Manipur in which 3 people have been injured. As per police sources, around 7:30 p.m. this evening, a Scorpio vehicle that was parked in the Kwakta area in Bishnupur district, that exploded, and it is likely to be an IED, that explosive that caused this explosion, in which 3 people have been injured there in Manipur. Remember, ethnic violence has been continuing in Manipur for close to 2 months now, and now this blast has been reported in which 3 people have been injured. And the information that we're getting till now is that there was an improvised explosive device, or an IED, inside a Scorpio vehicle that blasted. And moving on the same day as Prime Minister Narendra Modi was in the United States on his state visit at the UN, India slammed Chinese efforts at blocking Indian attempts to list the Mumbai terror attack mastermind as a globally designated terrorist. India denounced China's move to block a proposal at the UN to designate Pakistan-based Lashkar-e-Toiba terrorist Sajid Mir, who's wanted for his involvement in the 26/11 Mumbai terror attacks, as a global terrorist. Now, in a sharply worded statement there, India said that if the proposal did not get through, despite several member states co-sponsoring it, we have the righteous reasons to believe that something is genuinely wrong with the global counter-terrorism architecture. News from Maharashtra now, where the onion crisis for the farmers continues after investing thousands of rupees in their crop. In the market, they're receiving just around 2.5 rupees per kilo of onions. Despite assurances from the government, nothing has changed on the ground. And traders say that not just Maharashtra, but farmers of other states are also growing onion, due to which demand has come down.
Balasaheb Pawar from Ahmednagar district of Maharashtra grew onions on his 3-acre land at the cost of 40,000 rupees per acre. But with the market price now at 2.5 rupees a kilo, he will barely make 15,000 rupees for an acre of crop. Naturally, he's upset.
प्याज करने में ये शासन ने जो अनुदान भी नहीं दिया, और ये 3 एकड़ में 75,000 इसका तोटा हो गया.
Onion farmers are bearing the brunt of a bumper crop leading to a glut. Traders say not just Maharashtra, farmers of other states are also growing onions, due to which demand from Maharashtra and other states has come down.
5 महिने झालं आमचा कांदा अक्षरशः काडी मोलितो, शासन आमच्याकडे लक्ष देत नाही.
महाराष्ट्र में जितना उत्पन्न इसके पहले होता था, उसके ज़्यादा भी उत्पन्न अभी कर्नाटक, तमिलनाडु, केरल उधर स्थानिक हो रहा है. इसके लिए उधर जो इधर से कांदा खरीद करके खरीदार जो बेचते थे वो कम हो गया. बोले इसकी वजह से उसके जो रेट जो कम आ रहे प्याज के.
In March this year, farmers marched 110 kilometers from Nashik to Mumbai, demanding the right price for their produce as well as help to tackle the impact of low price of onions. The government assured farmers that they will be helped in an attempt to convince them to end their protest.
सरकार इंटरवेन करेंगी और किसानों को राहत देगी, इस प्रकार का लिखित स्वरूप में आश्वासन दिया था. लेकिन आज जब किसान बहुत संकट में है, 2 रुपए प्रति किलो की दर से अपनी प्याज बेचने के लिए मजबूर है, सरकार कुछ नहीं कर रही.
Farmers' leaders are upset with the government as there has been no change in the condition of the farmers, despite promises. While the government promises relief to the farmers, the question is, when will the promise of financial assistance from the government come through? With Sagar Dusal in Ahmednagar and Sohit Mishra in Mumbai, Sneha Koshi for NDTV.
That's all we have for you in this show. Thanks very much for watching. Good night.
This reward program.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust.
And when SEEP is with you, you can soar high!
LIC's unit-linked insurance plan SEEP offers savings and protection so that you can soar high in your life. LIC, हर पल आपके साथ.
जी
ये चिट्ठी है बेटा आपकी.
भैया चिट्ठी आई है आपकी.
मैंने सुना है बेटा जहाँ तू जा रहा है वहाँ तो ठंड ही बहुत है. क्या हुआ बेटा? है बेटा?
पंजाब सरकार की चिट्ठी है मम्मी. मेरी नौकरी लग गई. सरकारी नौकरी लग गई मम्मी.
सुनते हो? अपने छिंदे की सरकारी नौकरी लग गई. अब काम के लिए उसे प्रदेश में धक्के नहीं खाने पड़ेंगे.
पिछले एक साल में मुख्यमंत्री भगवंत मान पंजाब की तरक्की के लिए देश विदेश से 48,000 करोड़.
Undeniable, we're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change, and it's happening. Not in some far off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network that informs, inspires and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV because the only side we're on is yours.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy and integrity because at NDTV, trust is everything.
"23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No
and welcome to NDTV 24/7. I'm Priyanshi Sharma, and well, today has been all about yoga as it was the International Day of Yoga, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi celebrated the International Day of Yoga at the UN headquarters as he's there on his first state visit to the United States. Now, after that Yoga Day celebration, the Prime Minister is now leaving New York and his next destination is Washington. Those are the live visuals that we're getting you from New York, where the Prime Minister is leaving his hotel, and of course he's being all of his supporters and the Indian diaspora there greeting the Prime Minister as he's now leaving his New York hotel, and his next destination is Washington, where his state visit will officially begin. Now later, after reaching Washington, the Prime Minister will meet CEOs and industry leaders, and on Thursday he will attend a dinner hosted by the US President Joe Biden and his family at the White House. And after that, of course, he will deliver an address to the US Congress. It will be his second address to the US Congress, which is the first for any Indian Prime Minister to give an address to the US Congress twice. So that's all that's lined up ahead for the Prime Minister's visit, as he's now leaving New York and is going to go to Washington next. There you can see visuals of the Prime Minister leaving his New York hotel, being received and greeted by the Indian diaspora there and several of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's supporters there in New York. So while the Prime Minister is now going to Washington, today has been all about the celebration of the International Yoga Day. So in this show, we will get you the highlights of today's historic celebration, along with how India has made yoga a way of life globally. Now, why do I call it historic? A world record has been created at the United Nations headquarters in New York for people of the most number of nationalities performing yoga together. People from 135 nationalities performed yoga today at the UN headquarters, along with Prime Minister Narendra Modi, beating the previous record of people from 114 nationalities performing yoga together. Now, the Prime Minister, who's on the second day of his 4-day US state visit, received the title for the Guinness World Record there at the UN headquarters. In fact, top UN officials, diplomats and prominent individuals from around the world joined Prime Minister Narendra Modi in this 1-hour program at the UN headquarters in New York. There you can see the Prime Minister receiving the Guinness World Record title. Now, the President of the 77th session of the United Nations General Assembly, Saba Korosi, the Hollywood actor Richard Gere, and Mayor of New York City, Eric Adams, and the Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina J. Mohammed, were all among the prominent individuals who attended to today's event. The United Nations Secretary General, in his message for the Yoga Day, praised the practice as a uniting force. He also underscored the critical benefits of this ancient practice in a world that's fraught with danger and division, saying that yoga offers a haven of calm, reduces anxiety, promotes mental well-being, and fosters discipline and patience. Now, this year's International Day of Yoga held particular significance of India, as it was seen as a realization of a vision that was presented by Prime Minister Narendra Modi 9 years ago from the United Nations General Assembly podium. He had proposed marking the International Yoga Day as an annual celebration, and that vision has now become a UN-mandated occasion that we celebrate every year. Today's celebration highlighted how this practice that originated over 5,000 years ago in India has now become truly global. Listen in to what Prime Minister Narendra Modi said at the event today.
Yoga is free from copyright, free from patents, and free from royalty payments. Yoga is adaptable to your age, gender, and fitness level. Yoga is unifying. It is for everyone, for all ethnicities, for all faiths, and for all cultures. Yoga is a way of life, a holistic approach to health and well-being, a way to mindfulness in thoughts and action.
In fact, my colleague Maha Siddiqui is there in New York and she's tracking the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. Here's a report that she sent us earlier from the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters.
Right here behind me in the United Nations headquarters North Lawns, we can see 1,000 people performing the yoga at the International Day of Yoga, the 21st of June, being led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi here, an event for which all missions of the United Nations were given an invitation. The UNGA President is participating in the event today, along with several celebrities who have been invited as well. The asanas being performed here by the people, and after this event is over, the New York leg of the Prime Minister's visit will be over, and he is heading to Washington DC after that, which is going to be the main part of his visit to the United States, because that's when the state visit really starts. On the 22nd is when he will be meeting President Joe Biden for a bilateral meeting. He will also be given a guard of honor, considering this is a state visit. We are expecting some big announcements in the defense sector as well as in the technology sector. In the defense sector, at least 2 deals, the joint and co-production of the GE jet engines with HAL India that will be used in its latest version of the light combat aircraft. If that happens, that really is a big deal, because it might build the ground for technology transfer, considering that India has laid stress on Make in India and Atmanirbharta as far as defense sector is concerned. The other important deal could be a buyer-seller, a purchase of the American drones that India requires at the moment. In the tech sector, we are looking forward to some more development as far as semiconductors are concerned. Both the sides have started the initiative on critical and emerging technologies, and they will take that forward with several announcements in the times to come. As far as the other events of the Prime Minister are concerned, in Washington DC, he'll be addressing a joint session of the US Congress for the second time. That evening, that is 22nd evening, is when a state dinner will be thrown for the Prime Minister as well by President Joe Biden. He will also be meeting young entrepreneurs and the Indian diaspora on the 23rd before he wraps up his visit to the United States. With camera person AJ Joseph, this is Maha Siddiqui in New York for NDTV.
Now, who was the yoga instructor that led this record-breaking event? Well, it was famous ballerina turned yoga professional Annalise Richmond, who led the celebrations alongside Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the United Nations lawns. She teaches yoga at 100 universities, and she led the yoga session today with a group of 6 American children. Take a look.
A very warm welcome to our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji.
Famous ballerina turned yoga professional Annalise Richmond leading the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN lawns alongside PM Modi. She leads the yoga session with a group of 6 American children between the ages of 8 and 12 years. Richmond was contacted by the Indian representatives at the UN through her local teacher in NYC to participate in the yoga event with Prime Minister Modi. Richmond's first exposure to yoga was when she was 18, but she believed that it was only about stretching. 5 years later, when she met a Bengaluru-based art of living teacher in New York, she began to believe in the practice. This greatly helped her heal from the injuries she sustained in her profession. She says that certain breathwork and meditation practices eased her anxiety while navigating a high-pressure career. She learned yoga at the Art of Living campus in Bengaluru that she visited in 2006.
You know, India holds a really dear place in my heart because I did all of my yoga, pranayama, and meditation training in India through India with Gurudev, Sri Ravi Shankar, and the Art of Living. I did it 23 years ago.
Richmond now teaches yoga in over 100 universities across the US, including Harvard and Columbia.
A great honor for me to be leading yoga, pranayama, meditation for PM Modi, who has helped spread this knowledge around the world.
Bureau Report, NDTV.
And as we celebrate the 9th International Day of Yoga, let's find out how it all began. My colleague Arun Singh traces the history of yoga that originated over 5,000 years ago in India.
It's International Day of Yoga, and how can I not start my video with an asana? Let's go. Shirshasana. This asana helps improve body posture, concentration and balance. It also reduces stress hormones too. That's the magic of yoga. I'm Arun Singh and I'm here to give you a quick history lesson on International Day of Yoga. The word yoga is derived from the Sanskrit word yuj, meaning to join. The practice of yoga is believed to have started at the very dawn of civilization. In the yogic lore, Shiva is seen as the first yogi or Adi Yogi. Bhagavad Gita mentions the concept of Gyan Yoga, Bhakti Yoga and Karma Yoga. Have you heard of Patanjali? No, we're not talking about Ramdev's Patanjali. Patanjali was a sage in India who's believed to have authored Yoga Sutra, a classical yoga text dating to 200 BCE to 200 CE. Swami Vivekananda took his learnings to the West. In the 1920s, as Indians geared up to fight Britishers, yoga got popularized as a way to strengthen the body. BKS Iyengar started Iyengar Yoga and was considered one of the foremost yoga teachers in the world. Slowly and steadily, yoga became more than an exercise. Pranayam and Dhyan got as much attention as the asanas for physical strengthening. Cut to 2014, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi in his UN address suggested an annual day of yoga on June 21. And boom, we started celebrating International Day of Yoga from 2015. Arun Singh for NDTV.
With that, we'll take a very short break, but stay tuned for lots more on the other side.
Co-presented by
Undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The Climate Explainers, part of NDTV's 6-month-long campaign, building a blueprint for climate action. The climate clock is ticking, but we're just in time.
The NDTV News Network that informs, inspires and illuminates. Watch every side of the story here on NDTV because the only side we're on is yours.
In a world filled with noise, we bring you news that you can rely on with accuracy.
Well, it's a very, very important visit of the Prime Minister to the United States. It's a visit which is important at so many levels. On the one hand, it is a state visit, which means it is a rare honor. The Prime Minister, the first Indian Prime Minister, who's going to be speaking to a joint session of the US Congress. It's also been a day when India's soft diplomacy is there for everyone to see with the yoga event on the lawns of the United Nations earlier on today. The Prime Minister now on his way to Washington, D.C., where the business end, in a sense, of this visit will begin. Joining us now to look at this visit and indeed why today is such an important day, Ravi Shankar, member of the Lok Sabha of the BJP, former union minister and a senior lawyer, also a wonderful person. Sir, first question, do you practice yoga yourself?
Yes, I did for an hour in my Patna Sahib constituency today. I do. And nice talking to you, Vishnu, after a really long time.
Yes, many. It's a long time. You know, let's start with a little bit about the yoga, because an area where India has done so well is soft diplomacy, and we don't talk about that enough. We keep talking about the strategic relationship, etc., etc. But this is so important, not just for our health, which is obvious, but it's also because it establishes India internationally.
First of all, the speech of the Prime Minister in the UN campus was historic and also very emotional. Yoga is a bridge which connects. not only your health, but also your inner self. And most important, Vishnu, his three expressions. It has no copyright problem.
Yeah.
It has no patent problem. There are no royalty issues. And then saying that Sabo ka kalyan ho, that the universe be happy, that the whole world be one. These are the abiding values of Indian sanskar, Sanskriti, or civilizational heritage, in whatever way you wish to call it. And that juxtaposing it as a vibrant symbol of India's soft power in the most well-recognized international city like New York, in the presence of so many delegates globally, I would say was a remarkable statement. All of us felt very proud. And remember, he went to Gandhi's bust, offer his flower respects there, and also talked about having a proper remembrance of the peacekeeping forces, not only of India, but also other countries who go in pursuit of UN mandate. Therefore, peace, amity, coexistence, and India's way of life was the most important shining symbol which he conveyed today.
And he's been incredibly persistent about this. For years and years now, he has pursued this, he has encouraged people, he's spoken about it over and over again in Man Ki Baat, any other forum that he could find, not just within our country, outside as well. And today it's an international movement. I mean, it's India's at one level, but it's also an international cause.
You are very right. Who made it? PM in the first address the UN General Assembly requested, and UN General Assembly immediately accepted, and 99% countries voted, because yoga is good for humanity. And this is how you convey yourself. But Vishnu, I would like to add a caveat. These appeals become universal. Who is conveying it? And Narendra Modi is a popularly elected Prime Minister of India. Let me share with you, you are a very experienced journalist yourself. In my very considered view, there have only been 4 Prime Ministers of India who have been elected by the people of India. Jawaharlal Nehru, Indira Gandhi, Atal Bihari Vajpayee, and Narendra Modi. Rajiv Gandhi won because of the emotional outburst in the wake of unfortunate assassination of Indira Gandhi. Morarji Desai was not. Vote was for JP, in which we had the privilege to participate in the movement in 77. But what is important is, Modi ji is not only speaking, but he's also showing results. India has become an economic powerhouse, 5th largest economy of the world. Programs like Digital India, like UPI, like direct benefit transfer, infrastructure development, all have given a big heft to the might of India, which Modi ji is presiding. And therefore, when Modi ji talks about soft power also, it carries weight.
Yeah. So let's talk a little bit about the relationship with the United States. If we were having this conversation, let's say 10, 15 years back, we would have perhaps been looking at it from a very different prism. It has been a relationship which in the past has been characterized by mistrust, by distrust, and today it is anything but that. What has changed?
What is important is a very extraordinary bipartisan approach, which is being witnessed in USA as far as India is concerned. And Vishnu, you may recall that most of the members of the American Congress requested that Modi ji should also address them. And therefore, the second unique historical opportunity he got in league with Nelson Mandela and Winston Churchill and all. But what is important is, in view of the tectonic shift happening in the geopolitical world, Vishnu, which you follow very closely, America is now perceiving, in my very considered view, that India under Narendra Modi is a very stabilizing force in Asia. And the way Modi could tell Mr. Putin also that ye samay yuddha ka nahi hai, ye samay shanti ka hai. I hope it was telecast also by all channels, including you. It went live. Therefore, the way he has advocated the cause for peace, the world is trusting him. And India is now under very responsible hands, and therefore India can be trusted. In view of all this, there is a new, I would say, acceleration or new energy as far as the interest of America and India are concerned. And obviously, both are democracies.
You mentioned an interesting point, Russia. In as much as we are reaching out to America now, America is reaching out to us. There is an acceptance now, perhaps more than ever before, in the United States that India will remain friends with Russia. India has its national interests, its national requirements. But that doesn't stop in any way America from being friends with us. Therefore, a recognition of the core of our foreign policy, which is India first and no one bloc.
You're absolutely right. There's a very famous expression, rarely used in pursuit of foreign policy, hyphenated relationship. India has been able to exercise that right, that I have got my traditional relationship with Russia, long-term standing. Russia has been a long-term ally, friends also. But you also want to be friends with you. And if you want the world to be peaceful, if you want the Asian region to be more stable, India is an important player. And that's how I see a very metamorphosis in the geopolitical interest as far as the regions are concerned, and a conscious, deliberate recognition by the global power led by America that India is very important. Why I say so, Vishnu? Kindly see French president's approach. Kindly see British Prime Minister's approach. Kindly see German Chancellor approach. I'm only asking major powers of the world, Europe included. All of them are converging on this fundamental premise that India is important for global peace and also global growth. And therefore, this relationship is to be cemented more, made more stronger.
One final question, sir. Do you believe at one level, in terms of the geostrategic concerns that we face, it's this association with the United States on concerns about China, which premise a lot of what we are going to see as part of the state visit, which begins tomorrow?
Well, I would only say, if there is need for a message, Vishnu, the message is there. Okay? That how India is being treated globally, including by the premier power of the world, America. But remember one thing, while under Modi ji we have always insisted for a good bilateral relationship, we have never ignored our own strategic interest vis-a-vis Pakistan or China. You follow India's defense very closely. Now all the roads and infrastructure on the boundary between India and China, are they now completely proper or not? Which was ignored by the previous government. Yes. I don't want to make any political comment here.
No, you're right. It's true. It's a fact.
And second, the most important, when it comes to the digital security of Indians, ultimately who blocked 300 Chinese apps, including TikTok? You remember that? No?
Yes.
It was under Modi's command. I had the privilege to work in those segments under his leadership. So ultimately, it happened. Therefore, this capacity and the courage to take proactive decision in pursuit of India's strategic interest is a real hallmark of the leadership of the Prime Minister.
A final question, sir. And again, we don't talk about this enough. It's the Indian diaspora. And it's not just the Prime Minister meeting the diaspora as he does, not just in America, but around the world, but the contribution of the diaspora to making America what it is, not just in terms of highly skilled Indians, but Indians who are now deeply entrenched in the political process of the United States, people of Indian origin, both parties. And therefore, it's not just a simple diplomatic relationship between countries. It's one based profoundly on that human association.
You're very right, Vishnu. And you may recall the theme of Modi ji whenever he addresses NRIs in any country he goes, and it's very popular there. Become a good American, but also remain a proud Indian.
Yeah.
When you have this kind of a combination, then it sends a different message. But all this could happen only if India is able to give something to the NRIs to feel proud about their own country. And this India's growth, economic heft, digital heft, UPI today is a global brand, Vishnu. I hope you know it very well. Huh? Therefore, all these things, how India is transforming itself, is really giving a different weight to the passport of Indians who stay abroad. Yeah. They have told us. Now our passport carries a different meaning.
Now, if only the Americans give us the visas a bit faster, I think it would make the work of the passport a little easier. It takes 1 year.
Very right.
It takes 1 year, sir. But they are working at it. They have issues which they're trying to address.
We are very happy that Indians are becoming members of Congress. Indian origin leaders are vice president. Many are governors aspiring to become. Good. We are very happy about it. Today we have Indians who are the Prime Minister. And Vishnu, on a lighter note, whenever I visit, and I won't like your viewers to know it, whenever I visit London, my famous spot is just by the site of Parliament, the statue of Mr. Winston Churchill, where is standing proudly Gandhiji in his own dhoti, half-naked fakir. Huh? Remember that? And today, Mr. Churchill has to accept even Nelson Mandela. Mr. Churchill said Indians have low intelligence, they cannot govern. And today, a young leader of Indian origin is the Prime Minister of England. You see how the world has changed in the last 75 years.
Yeah.
Today, Indians are leading Google, they are leading Microsoft, they are leading IBM. The world is watching with glee this extraordinary capacity of Indian human resource. And that also makes its own impact.
All right, sir. Thanks very much for speaking to us, sharing your thoughts. Very, very important visit. But we're going to see a lot more developing tomorrow. Let's see how a lot of those crucial deals go about and the final signature and what they entail. We'll take a short break, come back with more.
This reward program.
23 years of the big fight. This show is not just an ordinary debate show, but it is a responsibility in service of our viewers.
Facts are the foundation of a news story, but it's the views that shape these stories. Because when you hear views from all sides, you get the complete picture.
A debate has many facets, perhaps no one right answer. Left, right and center. Conversations that get to the core of the debate.
NDTV for news you can trust. No sensationalism, no ugly debates, no agenda. We strive to be transparent and unbiased in our reporting so you can get news that you can rely on.
It's undeniable. We're facing the crisis of the generation, climate change. And it's happening. Not in some far-off distant land or some millions of years away. It's happening now. And it affects everything we know and love. Information around climate change can often feel too distant, too jargony, too scary, too anxiety-filled, too technical, or too political. I'm here to change that. The climate.
After New York, Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington, D.C., where the state visit of the Prime Minister will officially begin. And he will meet the U.S. President Joe Biden and top CEOs. Euphoric Indian diaspora gears up in celebration to welcome Prime Minister Modi in Washington. Prime Minister Modi led the Yoga Day event at the UN headquarters in New York on the 9th International Yoga Day. The event creates a Guinness World Record for people of most nationalities performing yoga together, as people from 135 nationalities participated, including Hollywood stars, diplomats, political leaders. At the event, the Prime Minister says yoga is universal and free from copyright. A blast in ethnic violence hit Manipur. 3 civilians injured as a bomb planted in an SUV blasts in Manipur's Kwakta. The Home Minister, Amit Shah, calls for an all-party meet on June 24th to discuss the Manipur situation. And as the violence in Manipur continues for close to 2 months now, Congress leader Sonia Gandhi appeals for peace as ethnic violence continues, says unprecedented violence has left a deep wound in the conscience of the nation, and adds that it's devastated lives and forced people to flee the only place they call home. Climate change kills. Heat-linked deaths reported from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. In Uttar Pradesh's Ballerina, 54 suspected heat wave deaths in just the last 3 days. And NDTV speaks to badminton champions Chirag Shetty and Satvik Rankireddy, who rose to number 3 in world rankings in men's doubles after their win at the Indonesia Open. They now say their aim is to become world number 1. Hello and welcome to NDTV 24/7. I'm Priyanshi Sharma, and our lead story is the ethnic violence in Manipur that's been going on for the last 2 months now. Now, a blast has been reported that has injured 3 civilians in the northeastern state that has been witnessing ethnic violence for close to 2 months now. Now, police sources say that a bomb that was planted in an SUV in the Bishnupur district blasted, and as a result of that, 3 people have been injured. They add that currently it's suspected to be an IED or an improvised explosive device that was planted. And as the situation is not getting normal in the state, despite Home Minister Amit Shah's visit to the state 3 weeks ago, the Union Home Minister has now called for an all-party meeting on the 24th of June in New Delhi to discuss the situation in Manipur. And as tensions in the state continue, the Congress leader Sonia Gandhi appealed for peace and harmony, saying that it's heartbreaking to see our brothers and sisters who have coexisted peacefully turn against each other. She added that the violence has left a deep wound in the nation's conscience, and she said that it's sad to see people being forced to flee the only place that they called home.
Brothers and sisters of Manipur, for nearly 50 days, we have witnessed a great human tragedy unfolding in Manipur. The unprecedented violence that has devastated the lives of people in your state and uprooted thousands has left a deep wound in the conscience of our nation. I express my condolences to all those who have lost their loved one. The history of Manipur stands testament to her ability to embrace people of all ethnicities, religions, and backgrounds.
Now focusing on Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to the United States. Well, the Prime Minister has now reached Washington, where his official state visit begins. On Thursday, Prime Minister Modi will attend a dinner hosted by the US President Joe Biden and his family at the White House. He will also hold bilateral talks with the US President Joe Biden. And currently, as you can see, the Prime Minister has landed there in Washington, and that's why the Indian diaspora there has gathered to welcome the Prime Minister. Now, what all will be on agenda for Prime Minister Narendra Modi? As I mentioned, one, that crucial bilateral meeting with Joe Biden that will discuss strategic issues that concern the two countries. And along with that, there will also be a session that he will be addressing at the US Congress. This will be a joint sitting of the US Congress that the Prime Minister will address, and this will be his second address to a joint sitting, which is the first for an Indian and a rare honor for world leaders. Previously, Indian Prime Ministers, Indian leaders have addressed the US Congress once, but Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the first to address it twice. Now, before this, the Prime Minister was in New York, where he led the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN headquarters in New York. And in fact, the yoga program that the Prime Minister led for the International Day of Yoga at the UN created the Guinness World Record for people of most nationalities doing yoga together. together. 135 nationalities participated in that yoga event, breaking the earlier record of people from 114 nationalities performing yoga together. So the Prime Minister received that title for the Guinness World Record, and several prominent individuals, including Hollywood stars, political leaders and world leaders as well. The mayor of New York City also joined the Yoga Day celebrations led by Prime Minister Modi. The Prime Minister tweeted out after this event, and he said that it was a grand Yoga Day program in New York. I'm grateful for the energy and commitment shown by all participants, and this shows how yoga unites us in the pursuit of health, peace and harmony. Listen in to what Prime Minister Modi said at the yoga event.
Yoga is free from copyright, free from patents, and free from royalty payments. Yoga is adaptable to your age, gender, and fitness level. Yoga is unifying. It is for everyone, for all ethnicities, for all faiths, and for all cultures. Yoga is a way of life, a holistic approach to health and well-being, a way to mindfulness in thoughts and action.
Now, who was the yoga instructor at this record-breaking event? It was famous ballerina turned yoga professional Annalise Richmond, who led the celebrations alongside Prime Minister Narendra Modi at the UN lawns. Now, she teaches yoga at 100 universities, and she led the yoga session with a group of 6 American children. Take a look.
A very warm welcome to our Honorable Prime Minister Modi ji.
Famous ballerina turned yoga professional Annalise Richmond leading the Yoga Day celebrations at the UN lawns alongside PM Modi. She leads the yoga session with a group of 6 American children between the ages of 8 and 12 years. Richmond was contacted by the Indian representatives at the UN through her local teacher in NYC to participate in the yoga event with Prime Minister Modi. Richmond's first exposure to yoga was when she was 18. But she believed that it was only about stretching. 5 years later, when she met a Bengaluru-based art of living teacher in New York, she began to believe in the practice. This greatly helped her heal from the injuries she sustained in her profession. She says that certain breathwork and meditation practices eased her anxiety while navigating a high-pressure career. She learned yoga at the Art of Living campus in Bengaluru that she visited in 2006.
You know, India holds a really dear place in my heart because I did all of my yoga, pranayama, and meditation training in India through India with Gurudev, Sri Ravi Shankar, and the Art of Living. I did it 23 years ago.
Richmond now teaches yoga in over 100 universities across the US, including Harvard and Columbia.
A great honor for me to be leading yoga, pranayama, meditation for PM Modi, who has helped spread this knowledge around the world.
Bureau Report, NDTV.
So after that New York visit, the Prime Minister is currently in Washington, and he's just landed in Washington in a short while ago, and those are live visuals that we are showing you from Washington DC. Now, several important events that are planned for Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington, important discussions that he's going to have with the US President Joe Biden in a bilateral meeting, and these discussions could focus on defense partnerships, technological partnerships as well. Those are the topics, those are among the many topics that the Prime Minister will discuss with the US President Joe Biden. And while it was day 2 of the Prime Minister's US visit in New York, his a state visit officially begins now as he's in Washington DC. Till now, the Prime Minister had met thought leaders, CEOs, and he led the International Yoga Day event in New York. But now is when his state visit officially begins. Remember, this is the Prime Minister's first state visit to the United States, though he's visited the United States several times in the past since 2014, but this is his first state visit. Now, what all is going to happen in Washington over the next 2 days? The Prime Minister is going to have a bilateral meeting with the US President Joe Biden. On Thursday, the Prime Minister will attend a dinner that will be hosted by the US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden at the White House. He would inspect the Guard of Honor at the White House as well, and later on he will hold bilateral talks with US President Joe Biden. Now, after that, he will address a joint sitting of the US Congress, and this will be his second address to a joint sitting of the US Congress. That's the first time that an Indian leader will deliver an address to the US Congress twice. Previously, several Indian Prime Ministers have delivered an address to the US Congress once, but Prime Minister Narendra Modi is the first to do that twice. So that's why this visit is significant. Along with that, the discussions that he will hold with US President Joe Biden are extremely important for the partnerships between India and the United States. And there you can see on the left-hand side of your screen, that's the Indian diaspora that's gathered to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi in Washington. And on the right side, you're seeing as he was in New York and he met several people from the Indian diaspora, several thought leaders, CEOs also that he met, and he met several of his supporters there in New York as he left New York today after leading the Yoga Day celebrations, and he's now in Washington. Now, there are several issues that will be discussed. Earlier, John Kirby, the U.S. National Security Council Coordinator for Strategic Communications, said that the Prime Minister's visit will strengthen the bond between the two countries and strengthen their shared commitment to a free, open, prosperous and secure Indo-Pacific, and their shared resolve to elevate their strategic technology partnership, including the partnership in defense, clean energy and space as well. He also added that India's growing commitment to playing a more engaged international role will also be strengthened. There you can see Prime Minister Narendra Modi arriving in Washington, D.C. to officially kickstart his state visit to the United States. There you can see the Prime Minister walking down as he steps as he enters Washington, D.C. My colleague Maha Siddiqui joining us from the United States currently. And Maha, we are seeing the Prime Minister has reached Washington, D.C. So what all can we expect over the next couple of days? And why will these 2 days be important for both India and the United States?
Priyanshi, the Prime Minister has landed at the joint Andrews base where he will be received by a large number, or rather he has been received by a large number of diaspora who are planning to be there. In fact, this is, he landed at around 10:25 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Those pictures are just about coming in now. Meanwhile, his next 2 days are going to be pretty packed because this is a state visit. So apart from the Guard of Honor, there will be a bilateral meeting with President Joe Biden, after which we are expecting some big announcements, big ticket announcements in the defense and technology sector. As far as defense is concerned, the joint production of GE jet engines, which HAL will use in its light combat aircraft, the latest version, as well as buying of drones. Those are the two big announcements one is expecting. In the tech sector, we should expect something in the semiconductors area because of the fact that the two sides under ISET, under the Initiative for Critical and Emerging Technology, have already taken an initiative on semiconductors. And it does appear that there could be some deal around Micron that could be announced as far as manufacturing is concerned of semiconductors in India. So those are the big ticket announcements we are looking at the moment. Apart from that, if you take a look at the other engagements, this second address of Prime Minister Modi to the joint US Congress, that will happen again on the 22nd of June in the afternoon. And in the evening, there's a state dinner. The state dinner will have about 250 guests as of now, as we know. And it will have a sizable number of Indian Americans also, some who made contributions to the American society. Well-known Indian Americans will be present at that dinner as well. This 21st evening here in Washington, D.C., which will be overnight in India, there is going to be an intimate family dinner that the Bidens will be throwing for Prime Minister Modi. This will start at around 6:30 p.m. Here in Washington, D.C. And on the 23rd, that is the final day for the Diaspora as well as the young entrepreneurs who he will be addressing. So, yes, a pretty packed schedule. A lot of takeaways expected, forging of closer ties between India and US. Many believe that it's largely because of the common threat of China. And as the US has very clearly pointed out, John Kirby, in his US official John Kirby, in his press briefing said that from the US side, they are going to raise the issue of Ukraine war. Rather discuss, not raise. Discuss this issue. He said it is but natural that it will come up for discussion. So on that, sources had already pointed out that India has had a pretty standard response to whenever this issue is raised, that the Prime Minister has already told Vladimir Putin, the Russian president himself, that this is not the era of war. So that is how they will explain their stand as far as the Ukraine war is concerned.
Important state dinner, and along with that an address to the US Congress. But the Prime Minister is also going to meet several CEOs there in Washington. When are we expecting that, and which are the CEOs that he's meeting?
So as of now, we are not aware of the CEOs that he will be meeting in Washington, D.C. But yes, today itself in Washington, D.C., which will again be overnight for India, he will be meeting on a one-on-one or group basis some CEOs, Priyanshi. Just the way in which he met people in New York, where he met about 24 people in 3 separate groups of think tanks, academicians and health sector experts, as well as one-on-one conversations with a few, including with Elon Musk, the owner of Twitter and the founder of Tesla. Similarly, a similar pattern could be followed to Washington, D.C. But an address to young entrepreneurs at the Kennedy Center is also going to be watched out for. This event is being organized by the US-India Strategic Partnership Forum, the USISPF, and largely the Prime Minister here will be addressing the young entrepreneur. And this will also give them an opportunity for some sort of networking as well, considering that the event will be followed by a reception where there will be interaction. And therefore, as I was pointing out, the closer ties that the two sides are looking at as far as, for instance, technology engagement is concerned. When the US NSA Jake Sullivan was in India just ahead of Prime Minister Modi's visit here to the United States, he clearly pointed out that if the two countries have to partner on technology, then it cannot be a government-to-government interaction. It has to be industry-to-industry. And that is why it is very important and relevant that the industry leaders are engaged continuously at every platform. And we saw that when Jake Sullivan was in India, the CII had organized a meeting 1.5 track where there were industrialists and who did point out some of the top leaders in the industry what is required on both sides for the seamless coming together of the industry on either side for technological advancement, because both sides are looking at not just semiconductors for instance, to counter China or to reduce the dependence on Taiwan, considering that the Taiwanese company TSMC holds the largest chunk of semiconductors manufacturing. And during the COVID-19 pandemic, there was a supply chain problem because of, some few companies only a few companies around the world largely being able to manufacture and package semiconductors. So clearly it's an area where the two sides want collaboration. But apart from that, there is space. Modern warfare is going to be fought in space and not really on the ground, even though there is a Ukraine war going on. But we know how critical communication lines are during wars. And it's all through the space. All the satellites are there. So the space is another sector of focus for the two sides, and artificial intelligence as well, and quantum computing too. So all these, for all these, industry to industry contact is necessary, and that is why this thrust on meeting industry leaders.
Right, Maha. Well, thanks very much for joining us with those details. We are showing you those visuals of Prime Minister Narendra Modi reaching Washington for his state visit, as his state visit officially begins now that he has landed in Washington. Before that, he was in New York, but now over the next couple of days, as Maha was pointing out, that certain extremely important events planned for India-US ties. The Prime Minister will have a state dinner that will be hosted at the White House by the US President Joe Biden and First Lady Jill Biden. Along with that, after that, the Prime Minister will address a joint sitting of the US Congress for the second time. The Prime Minister has visited the United States several times in the past, ever since 2014, but this is his first state visit to the United States. And NDTV, of course, is bringing you ground reports there from the United States, from New York, and now we'll keep getting you updates from Washington as well from for the Prime Minister's visit to the United States. And the Indian diaspora there in Washington, D.C. is welcoming the Prime Minister with huge celebrations. The diaspora, in fact, gathered outside the Prime Minister's hotel where he's going to stay in Washington, and they are they got ready to welcome Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So the Indian diaspora has been an important part of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit, even at the yoga event that he led in New York, that had a massive participation from people from 135 nationalities. In fact, that broke the world record and got the record of the people from the most number of nationalities performing yoga together. So after that record-breaking event in New York at the UN headquarters, the Prime Minister is now in Washington, where he's going to have a bilateral meeting with the US President Joe Biden as his state visit officially kicks off now in Washington. We take a short break now, but we'll get back with more news on the other side. Stay tuned.